I'm Sean Christopher Lewis. I'm a solo performer and a playwright, and I run a theater company that tours, so a touring theater company. Most of the work that I do is social and political in some way. Like they usually are dealing with either themes of race, class. I write about class a lot, or global politics. I'm really interested in politics. Big West Wing fan. I always wanted to. I'm sure part of it is narcissism. I liked being, I was always interested in doing a lot of different things. Like when I was studying theater, I liked acting, but I also was interested in directing and writing and the technical side. Like I liked design. And so when I was an undergrad, it was a way for me to play with all of them. Like I would create smaller, like 5-minute, 10-minute long things, but it was a cool way for me to go like, all right, I'm gonna put the music there, I'm gonna do this and that. And a lot of my heroes were solo performers. Like I really liked Bogosian. I loved Danny Hock. Danny Hock was the main reason, I think. He's this hip hop solo performer. And I grew up obsessed with hip hop music. And he was this white guy talking about hip hop on stage by himself. And I was like, this is fucking it. Like if this is a job, this is the job for me. Like I want to get on stage and talk about Mobb Deep for like an hour and have people pay me for hearing me talk about Prodigy and Havoc. And yeah, but his show was also, it was amazing, and he's very political in his work, and I was like, oh, just light bulbs kind of went off, where I was like, I hadn't seen a lot of theater up to that point. Like I was maybe 20. And I didn't grow up watching theater, and so my ideas of it were very like, it was much more along the lines of like Broadway. Like I was like, oh, it's like musicals and stuff that are like fine, I guess. But then when I saw him, I was like, oh, he's just like, he's on stage wearing a t-shirt and like these starter pants and a sideways hat, and he's rapping on stage and he's doing his monologue, and it's about stuff, and it looked like people I knew. And I think that was it. From that point on, I was like, I wanted to write a solo show, and it took me a long time to, I think, get brave enough to actually do it. Like it finally got to a point where I was like, okay, I have to do this or I'm never gonna do it. I'm glad I did. But yeah, so yeah, Danny Hock would be a big one. John Leguizamo too. People always think of him as like some of these horrible movies he's been in, but he's a fucking amazing solo performer, like incredible. He's another one that I saw that I was like, oh, and some of the stuff that we even talked about today is like, what is a solo show is wonderful in my mind because it's so definitive on the person making it. There's something where like plays, I love plays too, and I write them, but there's something so romantic to me about solo work that like I go to see like Ensemble and I see him, like he's dancing like from the beginning, and I'm like, oh, this is so different than my life. But then he's talking about like his issues with his dad, and I'm like, this is so like my life. We're not different, even though we're completely fucking different. Like, and I really love that about just about it. Is it the beginning? Beginnings are hard. First drafts. I think writing anything for me, a first draft is fucking annoying. Like, I just want to be done. I'm a perfectionist and I'm really impatient. so there is that level of like, as I'm writing the first draft, just going like, I'm bored of this, or like this I don't think is that good and I don't want to work that hard. So I'm gonna put it over here. So like getting the first draft is always the hardest. Once I have the first draft, I think everyone feels this. Once you have it, then I at least have that like, those bones to like pick and choose what I need, and then I can work with it. But it takes me so long to get that first initial draft down. Once I have it though, I go through so many drafts. I mean, that's the beautiful thing with solo work too, is like, what I love too is so much of the revising happens on your feet. Like I'll go and do a presentation somewhere, and then I'll be like, ooh, that did not go well. Like, where I thought it was funny was not funny, where I thought it was sad, no one thought it was sad. So I've got a lot of work to do, and then I'll make little revisions, and with, like I'll tour a show for a long time, and I'm usually making changes of it over a course of years. With each one, it's like, oh, okay, the ending could still be stronger at that moment. And there's something I like about that, as much as that should be frustrating, there is that like, that idea of chasing perfection, that in a way I actually really like. You're never going to get to it, but there's also a beauty in the fact that like the show will continue to get better, and as a result, I will continue to get better. That's always been my draw to theater as a whole. Is like I felt like I could see, because it's a craft, you can literally see yourself improve, and that's really exciting. You know, when you write that play that you're like, this is so much better than the last thing I wrote. That's a great moment. And it's huge. It's the only way to have a career, I think, on multiple levels. I mean, you know, the theater company that I run, you know, is made up of me and 2 people that I met in grad school. You know, that we met and we were like, and my thought was always, I was like, okay, you do my work well, you get my work. I'm not letting you go anywhere. like I'm going to take you to the castle and lock it. Because it's hard. I think actually, you know, a lot of what we do in this writing life, and in just life in general, is like we're looking for our team, right? Like you're looking for the people who understand you, whether it's as a person or as an artist. And it's hard, like that really understand you. Like you always find people who are like, yeah, I kind of get you, I kind of like that. And you're like, oh, I'm kind of committed to that too. You know, like I don't know what that means, but you're just constantly looking for the people that are going to support you because it's so hard otherwise. Like I just don't know anybody that is true. There's some people I know who purport themselves to be like a one-man band. Like no one has helped me, I use no connections, and that's not true either. Because yeah, these are the people that, they're your peers, you know, like you need people to have healthy competition with, right? I actually do also believe you need people to have unhealthy competition with. Like you need both, you know, because it pushes you. I think if anything, it gives you people to balance off of who can do things you can't do until you can do them. You know, like that you're in a good relationship. I think you're pushing each other just to keep getting better. That would be the hope. As opposed to like drowning each other. Don't be afraid to create your own opportunities. When I first started coming out and doing solo work, especially, and producing my own plays, I definitely had some friends back in New York who would worry in ways of like, oh, that might be looked at as like unprofessional or amateur, or why don't you wait for someone else to do it for you? And I can definitively say that waiting is death. That like what you're doing it's clearly too important to you because you've spent so much time. Yeah, you have spent too much time on it to wait for somebody. And no one is also in your head to see how great it can be when it's fully realized. You know, like they read a page, but they'll miss the subtext, they'll miss those other things. So for me, it's always been about create. You know, you're creating work and you're throwing it at and understand you're throwing it at an abyss. Even in the best terms, you know, it gets produced and then it's gone, but there's something beautiful about that, as long as you just keep making stuff. And I think that's the big thing, is making stuff to full fruition and not waiting for other people to do it for you. That would be the main. If there's only one, that's the big one.